Hello and welcome to Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Marie Benard, and today we are speaking with Dr. Stan Tatkin. He is the author of many books, Wired for Love, Wired for Dating, Your Brain on Love, and his latest book is We Do, Saying Yes to a Relationship of Depth, True Connection, and Enduring Love. Dr. Stan Tatkin is a registered psychotherapist and he teaches all over. He teaches therapists. He is very well known and also has a popular TED Talk that has close to 1 million views, and that is Relationships Are Hard, But Why? So take a look at that later on after today's interview. Welcome to the show, Stan.
Hi, Marie. It's good to hear from you again.
Welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you on. So you have this latest book, We Do. Maybe you can give us a little bit of overview for newer listeners on what all of this relationship stuff, you have kind of a little bit of a different take on relationships than some of the other dating gurus out there.
Yeah, I do. From my perspective, it's from a psychobiological viewpoint. That is, we study in PACT, which is the approach I developed. We study the brain and the body. So that's a developmental approach. But We Do is basically a prevention book. It's a premarital, pre-commitment book on everything that I've written about and talked about thus far. As a way for partners who are considering getting together or are already together or considering marriage for that matter, things to think about, talk about, prepare for together so that they avoid having to come see someone like me 20 years into their relationship. So that's We Do is different from I Do because we're trying to move the culture more towards weism and away from meism, interdependency, not codependency. So that is really the essence of the book.
Thank you, Stan. So in your other books, you go over the general attachment styles and you have more of a nautical theme to them. You have islands, waves, and anchors. So just for people who are new to your material, do you want to give us a quick overview of what that is?
Yeah, a part of relationships involves what is called the attachment system. And attachment is basically a study that looks at infants and their caregivers, and then later on adults, in terms of their sense of security and safety when depending on another person in that relationship. So a secure person is someone who feels safe and secure with their primary attachment figure. In adulthood, that would be one's lover or one's best friend, perhaps. And that means if somebody is secure, that they are not overburdened by fears of abandonment or fears of engulfment. They're able to be autonomous while at the same time able to depend on another person without shame, without fear. Now, contrast that with somebody who is less than secure. If somebody is secure on the clinging side, they cling, that person generally has a history of being fearful of abandonment, their partner withdrawing from them, feeling like they're a burden or they're too needy. And this causes some predictable problems in any dependency relationship because the fear then leads to a set of behaviors that is intended to protect themselves, but it's costly because it puts a lot of stress on the relationship. If that person is on the distancing side of being insecure, then they're preoccupied with feeling taken over, usurped, co-opted, having their independence, autonomy taken from them, maybe even having their stuff taken from them. And so they're constantly afraid of depending because that never worked out very well in childhood, and they are over concerned with loss of self and independence. And that can also put a lot of strain on a love relationship. It is threatening to a partner, just as clinging and being constantly fearful of withdrawal and abandonment can also become threatening to the other partner as well.
Thanks, Stan, for explaining that. And it's interesting, in your books, you also make it clear that nobody is all one thing. There are very few people who are just hard and fast islands or hard and fast waves. We kind of are more ish, and we sort of can vacillate. Yeah. And I've noticed, because although
I must say that there actually are a lot of people who are dyed-in-the-wool islands. That's the distancing group, or waves. That's the clinging group. There are a lot, but people misunderstand it, and too often, pigeonhole themselves or each other when they're not all of that. They're simply ishy, like you put it. Go on.
With the island, so I had an experience with an island who was lying and keeping secrets from me, and boy. Yes. Consequently, our relationship ended, but so it was the island way of like, I'm going to go my way and do my own thing. But I honestly feel that the motivation behind the hiding was because of the fear of losing me.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me to think, oh, well, isn't that a little bit of a wavish attitude manifesting an island behavior?
It could seem that way, and again, it would be what the central issue is about keeping secrets and not telling the truth. For the wave, it can be fear of abandonment, but the secrets that waves keep are generally, they're not cheating, they're not lying in the same manner. They're trying to protect the relationship. Because they don't want to lose the relationship, they're preoccupied with not losing the relationship. Whereas islands, they're afraid that if they are themselves in the relationship, then the other person won't tolerate it. For instance, islands like it when their partner goes away, not because they don't love them, but because they feel a relief from the tremendous amount of interpersonal stress they carry all the time. And so they will activate themselves outside of the relationship because they feel they can't do it in the relationship. So their modus operandi is to hide, be secretive, withdraw, avoid, and comply, because they can't be themselves and engage in the relationship. They have to go outside of the relationship in order to feel like themselves. Whereas waves don't want to go outside of the relationship, but they too have a hard time empowering themselves in a relationship, standing up for themselves, and making sure that the relationship is fully reciprocal and fair and just and collaborative. Waves tend to not do that. They tend to be they tend to wait for the other person to act too much, and then they're angry about it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for clarifying that. That's really helpful. So we're talking about your book, We Do, Saying Yes to a Relationship of Depth, True Connection, and Enduring Love. And I was looking at the Amazon reviews, and someone posted there that it's a helpful book even if you're not planning on getting married. So, and before we started the call, you mentioned that this is much more comprehensive. So can you tell us a little bit more about the difference between, if people have already read your other stuff, what new stuff are they going to get out of this one?
There's more it gets more into the biology, which is actually the bigger problem in that couples encounter more than the attachment issue. And that has to do with the fast-acting interactions that occur day in and day out between partners that are based on memory only, reflexes, automation, and the many errors that people make in their day-to-day interactions without even realizing it. And then they start to accrue a threat, a perception of threat. But in the book, we're talking about how to look for the right relationship, not the right person, the right relationship. What kind of relationship do you want? And what should we be? Not just me, not just you, but what should we be? What should we believe in? What should our mutual vision be? We're talking about problems in the bedroom, sexual issues. There's a whole chapter devoted to that. Fighting, there's a whole chapter devoted to that. The problem of deal breakers, this is a big issue with couples, things that they could not actually agree on that are so important and so opposing that it should mean the end of their relationship, but people tend to kick the can down the road and ignore it and defer it for another day. That is an important issue to take care of, any deal breaker. And then step families, raising children, and so on. So we cover much more than was covered in Wired for Love.
Okay, so now I'm curious. Your publisher kindly sent me a book, but it somehow got lost in the mail, so I haven't read it yet. But how big is this thing? Because to cover all of that feels like it would be really thick.
They managed to make the paper really thin. No, I'm kidding. It's not as big as you think. The type is actually a little smaller than that is in Wired for Love, but it is, by every account so far I've heard, easy to read. People read it cover to cover in a very short amount of time. And I do recommend that if you are in a partnership, you should actually read this together. Either stagger it and read it separately, but you both should read it. Otherwise, it's not going to be as effective, because this is a book filled with exercises, do's and don'ts, and if you're not doing it together, then it's going to be a problem. This is really something that people must do together.
Thank you. So it's interesting you mentioned the biology rather than the attachment issue. Because I'm kind of still hung up on the island and the wave. And I'd like your opinion, because I'm out there looking for the anchor, which is the secure attachment, who isn't overly afraid of abandonment and also not overly afraid that I'm going to lose their autonomy. I would guess that most single people in beyond 35 years of age are probably insecure attachment type. Is that fair to say, or is that what's your opinion?
No, I don't think there's no data to suggest that, and the data in terms of aggregates of insecure, secure in the United States is unreliable. So we're kind of left with here a personal take on if you are this or that and your partner is this or that, which is a dangerous thing. So I don't think anybody needs to look for an anchor, because anchors are difficult too. I mean, everyone's difficult. There are no easy person. There's no low maintenance person up close. So everyone's going to be difficult. Pick your poison. But what you want is somebody who is willing to play the game with you, willing to be in a secure, functioning relationship. And by that I mean a relationship that is fully collaborative, cooperative, fair, just, mutually sensitive, and a two-person system where people are operating under shared principles that they believe in. We call them shared principles of governance. As long as people are playing fair and they're pointing in the same direction, they'll be fine. So it doesn't matter if it's an island, as long as it's an island who knows that it's not working for them to defend themselves in this manner in every relationship. They're tired of it, and they're saying, okay, I'm willing to go all in. I know that I tend to hide. I know that I tend to be passive. I know that I tend to be compliant and hide. But I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. That's all you need, is somebody who's willing to play and have a shared vision of what this relationship should or actually must be. That's all you need.
But what if, so I feel like stop me if I'm talking too much about my own experiences, but
No, it's fine.
But what if the person that you're with is saying that, yes, I'm totally on board with this couple bubble thing. We'll talk about couple bubbles in a minute. I'm going along. I do see the value in having this relationship where we're both on the same page, but actually them saying that is just compliance, and they're going off behind the partner's back the whole relationship, not doing the things that they agreed. I mean, how often does that happen, and how do you safeguard against that? Because you have to take a person's word for it, right? When they say, yes, I want to do this couple bubble?
You take a person's word for it until they prove otherwise, but then there's a daily demonstration of fealty. There's a daily demonstration of radical loyalty that's in the little things that we do, that we share information with each other. We don't hide. We don't keep secrets. We're fully transparent. We're the go-to people. That's something that you experience every day. We're tethered together. If we do make an error and we hurt each other, or I hurt you, there's a misunderstanding, I fix it right away. I make amends. I make it right. There are things that are signs every day that show the person is doing this thing, not just saying it. And that's where people fail to be present and attentive enough on a daily basis to be able to check and see whether these principles are being acted upon every day. Then I don't think it should happen. Can it happen still? Yeah, it can. People can be corrupt, but you got to trust somewhere, right? But it's a day-to-day demo. Just like Tracy and I, every day, it's my wife, we demonstrate every day that we are each other's person, that our loyalty and our devotion is to each other because it's a survival issue. We know that if we have a mutual stake in this, if we behave in a way that ruins the trust or the safety of the relationship, we're both screwed. So that keeps us in. And plus, there are daily benefits for being all in and to be committed to another person or committed to a relationship and have that experience of feeling protected in the world, feeling safe in the world, having resources to be creative and do all these wonderful things that we otherwise may not be able to do because we don't have the resources. So this is an entire paradigm shift for some people who never saw it in their family. They never saw their parents be good managers of each other. They never saw their parents share power properly. And so forgive us, most of us, if we've never seen it, we don't know how to do this, and we sort of do what we know, and what we know maybe is that in relationship from our childhood, it's not about fairness and justice. It's about it has to be good for me, and if it's not good for you, sorry about that, pal. I'm saying this is a real understanding that the couple is a survival unit. They protect each other from the environment, from predators. They help each other live this life fully, and that's a commitment, a decision.
Thank you. We are speaking right now with Dr. Stan Tatkin about his latest book, We Do, Saying Yes to a Relationship of Depth, True Connection, and Enduring Love. And as I'm reading the title of your book, and you just mentioned about how so many of us haven't seen this, it actually, I think so many people don't even believe in the idea of enduring love anymore. Like it's a fairy tale. So can we talk a little bit more about that couple bubble and how we are having each other's back?
Yeah, I by the way, I think we don't believe in enduring love because the love we tend to register is short-lived, the kind of love that is infatuation, romantic love, which, by the way, can be generated by two people throughout life. That exciting love morphs into something quite different when people respect each other and they trust each other with their lives based on evidence. That evokes a different kind of love that is very long-lasting because it's hard to find. It takes years to develop. It takes years of protecting that safety and security system on a daily basis that gives rise to a sense that this person is irreplaceable. So we don't have anything in our culture that imposes on us a reason to be coupled. We have, really no organizing reason today that's in the culture for why you stay coupled. And so that's part of the problem. the couple is the smallest unit of a society. You don't get smaller than that. And that society, that couple system acts as, if they realize it, they act as leaders of not only their children, but their family and their community. People depend on that unit in terms of social justice. And so when I'm talking about secure functioning, I'm talking about social justice, right? That people are treating each other well and that they understand the reason for being a couple, that they are interdependent. And without that cultural emphasis on the importance of it, it's very easy for people to do what all human primates will do, and that is be selfish, self-centered, impulsive, fickle, comparing this to that, always aware of what is missing and what I don't have, right? And highly influenceable by the environment. So that's the nature of the human primate. What keeps us from doing that as a society, as a civilization? We have agreements in place that protect us from each other. The same thing with a partnership and a couple. So you have a police car, a cop car partnership, right? They don't necessarily like each other from the beginning. They don't even choose each other, but they are tied together by a fact, a survival issue of interdependence. They have to have each other's backs or they will perish. And given that structure and given that emphasis that you have to look out for the person next to you in order to survive, they end up telling each other everything. They end up being experts on each other. They're the go-to people. Their relationship often outpaces their marriages. Now, if they can do it, why can't a couple do it? That's because most of us don't realize what's at stake and why being paired up is safer and better than being alone. I think that's the reason. So I forgot the second part of your question.
I don't know. We were talking about couple bubbles, and I was saying how people don't believe in enduring love anymore.
Right. Yeah. And then you asked about what the couple bubble is. So you and I are a couple, and we're in each other's orbit. We have to protect each other from each other and everyone else. Therefore, we have rules, principles that protect us from each other, since we are animals, right? And so some of those are we protect each other in public and private. We don't throw each other under the bus. We don't embarrass each other. We say good things about each other, to other people. We handle third things, people, tasks in such a way that they don't interfere with our relationship. We put all our money on each other. We act as if, and in a real way, that we're fans of one another, because if we're not, we underperform. We are there for each other 24/7, no matter what. Other people will not do that because that's an expensive proposition. In other words, we agree to do things for each other that nobody would ever want to do unless they get paid a lot of money. And that's the quid pro quo. You and I can be as needy and as burdensome as we want, as long as it's equal, as long as we're both doing it. That's the quid pro quo. So a couple bubble is the couple's ecosystem, their safety, security system. It is the golden goose, and you don't mess with it.
Thank you, Stan. And I like what you said about as long as you're both doing it. I don't imagine that includes like keeping score all the time, but in general, it has to balance out. If one person's doing all the work and the other person's just off doing their own thing, that's more of a codependent relationship, not an interdependent.
That's right. If I start to feel that you're giving more than I am, I should feel a healthy guilt. And that should lead me to want to do more to balance that out, because we are in service to each other, right? We're serving each other. And so that then becomes a natural occurrence. Scorekeeping is a mistrust or a distrust in our ability to be equally conscious and aware of fairness and balance and service to one another, right? And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe somebody is truly misbehaving and is being, is just taking and taking. That's not going to work, right? So this should be ultimately a self-governing thing. And when it isn't, then partners have to sit down and say, this can't be. This has to be an equal partnership, right? Right. So, but generally, hopefully, it's self-governing.
Thanks for clarifying that, Stan. I have another question about that, though, because it is sort of human nature. For me, I feel if I do this thing for you that I think is really important and you might not even notice it, I feel the burden or the energy expenditure of putting it out, but you might not feel it on the same level. So I'm starting to count all those things of like, look at everything I do for you, whereas you might be doing other things for me that you feel is a huge energy expenditure, but I don't maybe get as much. I don't feel it the same way. So then it can feel like it's imbalanced, even though maybe it's not. Do you hear that fairly frequently?
Yeah, and there are two things there that have to be pieced apart. One is the problem of I do things for you that I would want, but I don't do things for you that you would want. So that's one problem. And the other is being inattentive and not noticing somebody's effort and not saying thank you, not saying I really appreciate it. I so appreciate all that you do, and not just all that you do. You specifically did the wash. You drove me to work. You picked up the kids. You made me dinner. I so appreciate that. I love you for that. I love doing that. And that awareness and acknowledgement of gratitude should lead to some measure of I want to do something for you. Right. So there's the recognition and not taking for granted the effort that others on a daily basis are doing for you. There's an entitlement, right? I don't need to thank you because you're doing what you're supposed to do. No. If you're not grateful, first of all, you're empty because you don't realize what you're getting every day. But also the other person goes unrewarded, and it's rude. If you're doing only what you think you would want and not checking to see whether it's your partner's want, again, that's quite self-centered, and that's not going to work. So those are the two things that I think people have to keep in mind.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I have one more question. So there's just one example of that is I was dating someone who doesn't have a lot of facial hair and is kind of light colored, but he would go and shave, feeling like, oh, I'm making myself more attractive for Marie. She's going to like this. And I wouldn't even notice because there was so little to note, like it wasn't visibly noticeable and it wasn't all stubbly. So he felt like he was putting in this effort, but most of the time I didn't notice. And then he ended up with hurt feelings. So how do you avoid things like that where I'm not being inattentive by not noticing? It's just that his perception of it was different than mine.
Well, it's also forgetting his part in this, and that is there's somebody paying attention and there's somebody also making something clear. So, hey, I shaved. Do you like it? Is it something you like? So he failed to do that. That's an error on his part. And it'd be nice if you noticed it, but not everybody notices everything. So it is important to acknowledge, here's this thing. Do you want me to put your clothes away or do you want me to leave them out for you to do it? No, I'd like you to do it. Okay. I've just done it for you. Thank you so much. Okay. So, there's this thing where people believe, it goes back to childhood, that their partner should know things, even if they don't say it. You should know I want you to come over to me, but I didn't tap the couch to signal you to come over. That is a wave-ish issue of I'm testing you to see whether you really love me, and that can be very wearing on the relationship. So in adulthood, we have to understand that we have too many things to think about. We're basically stupid. We're very smart creatures, but we're also very stupid. We're given to do the same things again and again without thought because we're 99 or 90% automatic every day. We're just operating by memory. And so to not remind or cue somebody and then expect them to, or to feel that you're not loved because they didn't get it, is unfair. People have to bridge communication to each other and make sure the other person actually understands something, and not just rely on a wish that, unlike my family of origin, I want someone to notice or to just do it automatically. That's not going to work. We're just not those animals. It would be nice if we did that, but it's impossible because there are too many things that we think about and have to work with that are novel every day. Forgive us if we relegate most everything we do to automation and reflex. So that's where a partner comes in. I'm not going to tell you, Marie, next time don't ever do this thing, because you will do it, not because you're evil, but because you'll forget. Everyone will. So the right thing to do is next time you do that, I'm going to remind you, or just before I'm anticipating, I'll remind you. Will you acknowledge that and make the shift? Yes, you will. Okay, good. That's the way to do it. That's what partnerships are for. I remind you when you're unaware of something, and then you will yield and do that thing because you agreed to. That's the easiest way to go about it. Otherwise, people will set each other up for disappointment and feeling angry.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So it sounds like you're saying it is our job to be caregivers of our partners, but not 100%. It's also our job to communicate what we need and be caregivers of ourselves. We can't expect 100% of the burden to always go on the partner. We both have to be sharing the load of taking care of ourselves and our partner at the same time.
Yes, and here's the formula. I have to be able to take care of you and me at the same time, take care of myself and you at the same time, or I get nothing. And if I continually only take care of myself, speak for myself, then I set up an adversary situation that will lead to war every time. So this is a two-person psychological system. Therefore, I have to make sure that everything I do is with you on board, and that I'm speaking to your concerns, your wants, your fears, not just my own. Otherwise, that's how we become threatened and how we start to fight. So that has to happen.
Thank you. And both people have to be taking care of both of us at the same time. And of course, we're going to slip at times, but that's where we remind each other and repair right away.
Absolutely, repair right away. And in couples, in my work, in my clinic, I know, and I teach all my students this, in couples, there are no angels and no devils. Where there's one, there's always the other. People pick each other based on familiarity. Therefore, I know that both are culpable. If your audience finds that they are litigating things from yesterday with their partner, or last night, or last month, or last year, that's a sign that they both failed to deal with something in the moment. That's a failure of management. We're supposed to deal with things right away, fix them, take them off the table, and move forward. So that's a really good sign that both are at fault. We keep going backwards and talking about what has happened and fight about it.
We are speaking right now with Dr. Stan Tatkin, and we're speaking about his latest book, We Do, Saying Yes to a Relationship of Depth, True Connection, and Enduring Love. And you mentioned just a moment ago about if we're bringing up things from the past, that means that we didn't repair them well enough in the present moment.
Or didn't address it.
What about for someone who is maybe not good over the phone, like something happens and we're separated? How do we take care of ourselves? Because I find sometimes I'll have all of these emotions that I need support moving through, but my partner, if he's not eye to eye and face to face, isn't very good at helping me repair that. So it's actually sometimes more effective to put it on the back burner until a later time.
Or get a new partner.
Okay.
because the reason I will accept your call, the reason I will be happy to talk with you when we're separated, even if you're if you're feeling needy, you're feeling lonely, you're feeling whatever, because I'm going to want you to do that for me. I'm going to expect you to do that for me. It's a two-way street. So for one person not to be available to the other suggests that this is not a relationship where we are both in agreement on, what do we do and what don't we do. Right. So Tracy and I, to give an example, Tracy and I will reach out to each other whenever, and we're tethered throughout the day. If we're away from each other, we can be tethered through that time as well. We're fine with that. It benefits both of us. And so if one of us is in distress, the other one agrees to drop what they're doing and minister to that person. That may not be convenient all the time for either of us, but we know that it's going to work in the other direction the next time. So this is, again, starts off with an agreement. We're going to be full burdens. I take you, Marie, as my burden, and that includes your history. I don't blame you for your history. I take accountability for it. I'm the only person around that can help you heal that history. There is nobody else. So I'm not, and I don't want to outsource it. And you're going to do that for me. And if you don't, you're fired, because that's what we do. That's what we do. And that becomes the prevailing culture, our 10 commandments, so to speak. And if we should have children, that becomes a powerful thing for our kids to see. If you want to see how to fight and how to love, watch mom and dad, watch us. You'll see we disagree, but we admit our wrongs. We make up. We fix things. We don't stay angry for long periods. We operate in a way that is fair. We're both bosses, and we give each other permission to do that. Watch us. That's a powerful thing to be able to do, and that's what I'm trying to groom people to do, to be responsible, present, attentive, adult partners. Who understand that this is not a frivolous thing. Building up trust and being there for each other, it pays dividends only if you do it. Otherwise, it'll feel like a ripoff.
Thank you. So you also mention in your book, you address the issue of stepkids. And this is something where, especially as we get a little bit older and we're still looking for a partner, many people now have children from previous marriages. And one of the things that I hear a lot, and I've always had a little bit of concern about this, is my kids come first. And for me, of course, if a kid has a broken arm, everyone's going to drop everything that if the child's physical safety is at risk. But if the mom and the dad, or the stepmom and the stepdad, aren't taking care of each other and putting that relationship first, the kid's going to suffer anyway. So how do you contend, especially in early dating, with someone who has the attitude of my kids are always going to come first no matter what?
Well, in early dating, it makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't that? I don't know you. I don't know. I have not made any agreements with you. Mm-hmm. I'm still vetting you, and it should be for at least a year, and you're vetting me. So, but when people do decide that they are going to, they're going to co-parent, right? They're going to be a unit. They're going to either be in a full commitment together as a couple, or they're going to get married. They have to think about the hierarchy of the system. That declaring that this relationship must come first doesn't mean that the kids, sleep in a closet with a bowl of water. It means that the oxygen mask goes on us first, so that we are resourced to be good parents. Yeah. We take care of ourselves so that we are unafraid and fully supported by each other, so we can handle everybody who depends on us. That's the idea. The idea is that if the couple, which is at the roof of the house, the top of the system, the big honchos, if they are a mess, everyone is going to be a mess around them. If they are poor managers of each other, everyone beneath and to the side of them are going to show some level of disorganization. So, you have to build the structure, and the structure has to be hierarchical. That means that both of these people are parents. One of them is the true mother or father, and does the disciplining. The other one dare not to, but they are both parents, and they are both responsible for the land, the people in the land. That means all the people, neighbors, family, kids, employers, everybody. They're the ones in charge of everyone and everything. That's why it makes sense to put the relationship first. It allows people to adjudicate and make decisions when they have to quickly, and make decisions that will not be at odds with each other.
So is there a way, because I agree, obviously, if you're dating someone and you've only been dating for a few weeks, you're not going to start dropping everything for another person. But there is that general attitude that no matter what, because these kids were born before I met you, you're never going to be at that level.
That's not a good sales pitch, is it? I mean, if you're going to be in a relationship with me, I want to tell you that my kids come first, my work comes second, myself comes third, and you come in a fourth. And anybody worth their salt should say, well, thank you, but I'm going to pass.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Because that's a bad deal. No. If no one's going to do this, but if my kids are drowning and you're drowning, I'm sorry, but dude, I'm probably going to pick my kids. Everybody understands that. But in terms of governance, the relationship has to come first if you think it through, because it's a feeder for everything else. The couple system is one of ease, one of freeing up resources that otherwise can't be freed up, like existential concerns. It is a relationship that is constantly resourcing itself, generating energy for itself to be able to handle the slings and arrows of life. It is a battery. It is a generator. So to not put emphasis there is unwise, because everything is going to be affected by the status of the relationship, the state of the union. The union has to come first in order to serve others, is what I'm saying.
Thank you for clarifying that. So we're talking about your book, We Do, Saying Yes to a Relationship of Depth, True Connection, and Enduring Love. And I'm sure every part of the book is important, but do you have a section that's most important or most favorite to you?
All of it is to me, because all of it comes from not only very solid research in the areas of science, neuroscience, arousal regulation theory, and basically basic anthropology of how the human primate operates, but it also is a signpost for what people will have trouble with down the line if they don't start talking about it before they get there. This is a way to prevent problems and to ensure an enduring relationship, and it takes a certain amount of honesty and humility to realize that you may not know all of those things. Why not take the advice of somebody who's been in this practice, seeing couples for many, many years? That's what the book is there for. I think deal breakers are an important issue in the book, and that is something that people will turn a blind eye to. And that's the kind of thing where, Marie, I want children and you never wanted children. And we have just strong arguments for this that are never going to die. And so we look at each other and we look into the abyss that is the end of our relationship because of this. And one of us says, let's buy a house. And that's human nature. Once we attach, we are afraid of losing the relationship. And so we will gladly kick the can down the road or defer an issue, even though it's going to get us. So I really encourage people to sweep for and discuss any deal breakers that are there and take them off the table for good, or don't stay together, because that will eventually, like a cancer cell, it will metastasize. So deal breakers come in all different forms around the kind of sexual desire you have and what your expectations are, whether you're a city mouse or a country mouse, whether it's a religious issue. It can be anything, but the sign is, I feel strongly about this, you feel strongly about that. This is non-negotiable, and it's a big ticket item. It's something I'm not going to be happy if you're not on the same page with me. That has to be taken off the table. Something that has to be reckoned with before proceeding.
And I imagine that younger people might not be as aware of their deal breakers because they haven't been faced with them.
Very good point. Absolutely. That's actually why I would love there to be some kind of early education on how to do relationships, and there isn't any, so that young people can learn early what it means to be secure functioning. And that's sorely needed in the Western culture, period. Probably everywhere, actually.
So I'm sensing your next book might be wired for teen dating?
Yeah, it could be. If they read it. I don't think teens bother to read books on relationships, but for those people out there that are therapists and work with adolescents, there's nothing better. I know it's difficult to arrange, and there are ethical issues that have to be worked with, but there's nothing better than working with teens and their love interests in the room together. That's the place to work with teens.
Beautiful. And I've heard some dating gurus say, and you may or may not agree with this, but a lot of these deal breakers, a lot of the things that end a relationship 5 years down the road, there was a hint of that in the first few weeks, but we were so caught up in the chemistry.
Yeah. Again, we're animals, and people, have to remember that. We're going to get sucked in by our own chemistry initially, because when we are infatuated with each other, we're brand new. We're not really ourselves. We're on drugs, endogenous drugs, that actually skew judgment. And this is well known. And so that's why we don't make decisions when we're in the throes of infatuation. And that's also why we vet our partners with our social network to keep us from making big mistakes. Otherwise, we can be blind. Because nature, you have to understand, nature does not have a plan for a long-term relationship. Nature just wants us to procreate and to mix up the gene pool. That's it. It's highly impersonal here. So we're on our own here with regard to picking an appropriate mate. And since all of our pickers are bad, it's better to vet each other, which has been done throughout the millennia, except recently, with our social network. Let's parade ourselves around with our peeps, male and female, young and old, and get a sense of whether do people like us together? Do we fit into our mutual cultures? Because if we don't, there'll be trouble. There's a reason why this has happened over the ages, and even where parents decided who you were going to marry. It still happens today, because the person who's coming into this couple system has to work within concentric circles of interested others that are socially networked. So that's what people should do to offset the tendency to be impulsive and to ignore all the signs, and then jump head first into a relationship because it feels great. It also takes about a year to really get to know somebody.
So at what point, you mentioned vetting, and I'm curious if that's covered in We Do. At what point should people be reading We Do, and at what point should maybe they be reading one of your other books?
Well, Wired for Dating is before We Do, obviously, but it also would come before there. But because it talks about selecting a mate based on what the relationship you want. But it's also covered, not as in depth, not as much in We Do as well, because it's also part of deciding whether you're going to commit to this person or not, right? So It's there in We Do, and it's covered in more depth in Wired for Dating.
Okay. So if you're just dating, read Wired for Dating, but then We Do is something also that it's probably a good idea to have in mind, because as you're getting to know someone down the road, you want to start seeing if there is this potential for the kind of relationship that you want to create.
Yes, and that's the key. The kind of relationship you want to create, not the person, the relationship, and then the person either fits with that vision or they don't.
But it can take up to a year. So, I mean, because if you're 35 or 40 years old, you can take a year and then realize, oh, this person is not wanting the right relationship. So now that's a year gone, and now the next person's another year. And
it doesn't mean it does. I'm just saying that it takes about a year to really get to know someone and not do what the mind will always do, fill in the blanks. So we have to understand that the human brain has something called a negativity bias from birth. That's a survival issue because we have to be geared more for war than love in order to survive. So we have a negativity bias. We tend to fill in blanks. Things I don't know, I fill in with my vision and my auditory senses and my touch senses, my smell senses, because if I don't have the reality, the actual experience, I'm going to fill it in with fantasy. We all do this. It's inescapable. And so the reason you want a longer time is because it takes a while to actually get to know someone instead of just relying on your wish, on your fantasy. And that means you're going to go through conflicts in that time. You're going to go through disappointments during that time. And you can get married before a year. That's fine. But either way, you're going to go through it. Because of the time it takes for reality to take over from fantasy and guesswork. But here's the other problem. Since we have brains that automate everything in order to conserve energy, you and I our novelty is going to fade. That's normal. And we're going to automate each other, which means we're going to think we know each other, but we're not going to pay attention anymore as closely as we did before. Mm. The antidote to that, and that's for everybody, is to pay attention, be present enough during each day so that you're looking and paying attention. You're not just relying on memory and assumption, that you are always examining, looking, being curious about the person you're with. That also leads to feeling love, eye contact, being curious, paying attention. That has to stay. Otherwise, people will get bored. They'll start to assume things that aren't true. They'll make loads of errors because they're basing everything on memory.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you have a whole section there, the troublesome triad, memory, perception, and communication. So we're just about out of time here. We have been speaking with Dr. Stan Tatkin. He's the author of We Do, Saying Yes to a Relationship of Depth, True Connection, and Enduring Love. Yes, it is possible. Hopefully. I mean, it seems like you and Tracy are doing quite well. And I know that many of your clients have built those kinds of relationships. So before we close the show, what would you say is the most important thing that you want listeners to take with them today?
I think don't be so hard on yourselves or your partner. People are not doing most of the things that we do with each other are misunderstood. Most everything is misunderstood. We're mostly misunderstanding each other much of the time. Communication is terrible, even on a good day. Our memories are nothing to fight about because no one's memory is right. And our perceptions are like a funhouse mirror. We make mistakes. We do things automatically, reflexively, mostly not purposely, and we don't realize it. We take everything personal, and that creates a big problem. I think that that everybody should take a good look at themselves and understand that we are all perfectly imperfect. There is no perfect. We're messy. We're annoying. We're a pain in the ass. Human beings are, and that's just the way it is. And so You should take each other as each other's pain in the ass.
Thank you, Stan. And thank you for being with us. I hope that you enjoy the book. And so many of all of his books are wonderful, and audiobooks. Again, the name of this book is We Do, Saying Yes to a Relationship of Depth, True Connection, and Enduring Love. Thank you to Stan Tatkin for being with us today. And thank you for taking this hour to invest in yourself and to spend with us. I want to send you so much love. Be well. Namaste.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.